Welcome back to the art room. Welcome back to videos. Today I'm going to talk to you about transitioning your line drawing project to your watercolor project. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person to give directions, but my hands are a little full with everyone else who is here. So this is the best runaround I can get. And again, we're going to just think of this as experiential art. All right. Normally I would give you guys lots of rubrics with lots of instructions and checkpoints that I want you to hit and meet. This is going to be a lot more fluid because it is what it is, kids. I'm sorry. This is not how I like to run art class, but this is kind of what I'm stuck with and what you're stuck with and we're all stuck with. And it's almost June and please just end the school year. Okay, so let me switch over and let me show you, well, before I do that, let's talk about what you've done. So far, you should have produced a line drawing, and we've looked at examples of that have detail and use lines to convey the scene out your window. So, assuming that's done, it's time to proceed to phase 2, which is what we're on now. And now I'm going to have you on a separate piece of paper, hopefully that nice thick watercolor paper. You are going to lay out the same scene you have produced with a line drawing, except now you're going to block it off to do watercolor. And even though both involves laying out and drawing a scene, these are two very different processes. And a line drawing includes a lot more detail, definite hints of texture, all of the lines that help convey the shape and the form and the view. When you're blocking something off for watercolor, almost none of that. You are literally, and when I say blocking something off, this is a thought process of sitting down to a blank sheet of paper and saying, okay, how do I get this scene, in this case, out my window onto the paper? And what's that going to look like? Now, there's a couple important things to remember for watercolor. One, these are very thin, clear, translucent paints. They're not opaque, which means you can see through them. So when you block off your scene with pencil, you are going to be able to see that pencil through it. So you need to, one, go very lightly, or two, follow up with your trusty eraser and take down those darkest lines. Now, when you're blocking off for a scene, because you can see through the paper, see through the paint, you don't want to do anything related to shading. You are literally just sort of putting a roadmap of where you're going to fill in with paint. And in particular, paying attention to areas that might remain white or very light, because with watercolor, even though some sets include a thing of white watercolor, it's not usually actually for painting things white. It's usually for helping to modify what we would call make a tint of one of the colors that you have on the palette. So with watercolor, you have to plan ahead to where your white areas are and leave those spaces blank. Now, one technique, if you've got fine little white details, like let's say you want a soccer net or something like that, where you've got little thin white lines. One thing that you could do is if you happen to have a white crayon at home, you can go over the areas that you want to remain white with the crayon, as long as you press pretty hard, and that will leave a waxy surface on it and the paint won't stick. And this is what we call a wax resist technique. Not necessary, just throwing that out now. It's a little early in the game to talk about that, and I'll talk about that more when we get to actual talking about watercolors. But for now, I just want you to set up the scene, which may or may not be setting, part of setting this scene up where you are now. Because certainly you need to leave blank spaces. Okay, I did something totally random in that I told you guys, and I want you very much to be looking out a window. I just invented something really fast because I needed something, and I had a very nice, clear sort of vision in my head of an apartment that I used to live in. And so I just sketched something out. So let me show you from a distance what blocking out looks like. Now, first off, locate your watercolor paper. Now, I'm going to get really close with the camera, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Do you see that texture? That's the watercolor paper. And when you shake it, it's stiff. This is the paper that you need. Everybody had a sheet of this. It should be about this size. I can't remember exactly because it was August when I cut that, what size it was, but I think it should be about this size. If you have used this for your line paper, I don't know what to tell you. It might actually be better for you to erase and then transition this over to your watercolor rather than your line drawing, just because the other paper that I have given you isn't going to hold up to doing watercolor on. This is specifically for painting. So hopefully you have found your way to the correct paper. All right, let me show you this, and then I'm gonna slide over and turn on the other camera and then sort of zoom in and talk about a few things. So I have envisioned a scene. Can I get it clear? Well, maybe not. All right. It's not showing up well, and that's actually a good thing because that means I've done my job pretty accurately. If you were able to see my dark lines like you can kind of down here, that means it's definitely going to show through when I go to watercolor this. But what I have for you here, and I'm still trying to find an angle where maybe you can see a little bit of it. There's not a whole lot. Blocking a scene off simply means kind of putting in a loose, rough roadmap of what you're going to do in the future. And let me just switch cameras. Come on, Elmo, it's time to wake up. There's Elmo. Come on, buddy. There we go. All right, so I have envisioned, I used to have this apartment back in the day outside of Philly where I could see a little bit of a mountain off in the distance. See if turning the light off helps. Boy, I did my job really well. All right, so I've got a little bit of a mountain off in the distance and then some fields and then a road running kind of parallel to the house, back, disappearing on that horizon line between the fields. And then I've got what will be sort of a bushy arborvitae there and another arborvitae here. And then you can see this is a window frame that is big enough to accommodate a plant. So it's got a fairly wide sill. And then the actual frame on the outside, the framing that goes around all the way. And so I've got that pretty close to the edge with just a little hint of where I'll add a little bit of wall color to the side of that. In this case, it will be yellow. And you can see that I've got a potted plant. It's mother-in-law tongue. And I've put, because they have this plant has very broad leaves, I've sort of marked off where those leaves are. And then it's sitting in a pot, which is sitting on a plate, which is a plate that actually exists. And it is a piece that I made. It's brown with a purple, the rim is brown and purple. It's like a hand-thrown pottery piece. And I use it, oops, I'm pointing to things you can't see. So it's got a thick kind of rim because I threw it on a wheel and fired it. And then the inside's like a matte purple. So I have set up the scene and notice what I haven't included. I haven't included any texture. There's no hint that this bush has, if you can picture an arborvitae bush in your head, it's got little short spiky ends. There's a lot of texture to it. There's none of that. The field of corn currently has no texture. The hill behind has no trees denoted, no leaves, none of that. And then this will be sky. I haven't made any allowances for clouds. I may not add some in depending on how I feel about it. Generally, other than setting up large areas of where color is going to go, I haven't put any other details in here. Notice I didn't even note where the dirt is in the pot. I'll throw that in later. This is what we call blocking off a scene. I've given just very simple outline of where things are going, and I'm not going to do any more, and that's it. I would expect that you should be able to do this, depending on how complex your scene is, in about a period. It might take you 2 periods, and that's fine. This took me, I think, about 20 minutes. I just sort of sketched things out. So this is when I say blocking a scene out, this is all I want you to do. And then you're done. Switching Elmo. Nope, I've turned my video off. Sorry. There we go. So that's all I'm expecting you to do for blocking a scene out. You can get to this point. I'll have a spot on the Google Classroom. You can upload it. And whenever you get to that, whether it's this class, whether it's a future class, that's fine. You can just upload it and then I'll know you're done. And then don't move on to the watercolor until I'm ready to do that. And I will put up additional instructions for you on that very soon. If you have any questions, let me know. If you need help, you guys can email me and I can meet you after school. All right. I can set up a time on a Zoom link to meet you. But otherwise, I really just kind of want you to have fun with this and just play with some paint. All right. That's what we're going to be ultimately doing with this project. It's not going to be like a normal full-on Sousy. We go outside, paint the landscape, and I give you a 100-point rubric with I want to see texture, color, shape, form, all of those exciting things, value, which you should be thinking about. This is why we covered it, but it's just too hard if I can't be by your side and assisting you. So again, middle school G period. So sorry your classmates are so rambunctious and need all of my attention, but I really can't leave them. So I'm going to kind of throw you guys out on your own, and it is what it is. So we're almost done. Hang tight. All right, guys, see you soon. Bye.